Hi, my name is Jayanti Mukherjee and I have here Dr. Divya Uma with me. We both are biology faculty at Azim Premji University and today we are going to talk about some of the common evolutionary misconceptions and this is for our NPTEL course that we are offering online. Divya, why don't you introduce yourself a bit and then we can proceed with the questions.
Okay. I teach biology in the Azim Premji University. I usually teach introductory biology courses as well as elective courses such as animal behavior. And I work on insects and spiders and their various behavioral ecological processes. So we can now start on various misconceptions of evolution. So both of us will ask questions to each other. These are basically very well-known misconceptions in evolution. So we'll proceed.
Yeah. So my first question would be, we often face when students look at Google images, they often see that a monkey is evolving to a human. And this is one of the most common misconceptions existing. So what do you say? Is that a correct interpretation in evolution?
Yeah, actually, here is what we have to imagine. As you can see in the slide, a monkey is making a linear transition to actually a human being. So it's not correct. It's a wrong depiction. Monkey doesn't turn into a human, right? So what we can say is both humans and monkeys have a common ancestor. So that's the correct interpretation. So yes, all of us, all organisms have a common ancestor and we are all related to each other. But that doesn't mean that one species, monkeys, will all become human beings. So that is definitely a misconception. So when we look at it more closely, we can say that we are closest relatives of other great apes such as chimpanzees and bonobos. From the great apes, we have evolved, so we have diverged from them 7 million years ago. So human beings, so that's the Homo genus, have separated from chimpanzees and bonobos 7 million years ago, and both these lineages have evolved independently. So that is the full picture. And of course, there is orangutans, there is gorillas. All these are other primates, and they are also in that phylogenetic tree. Right? So it is wrong to say, just give one figurine like that saying that, okay, monkey has turned into a human being. So we have to look at from a tree perspective and see which organism kind of diverge at which point of time.
I actually have a question for you now. So for example, we often think that evolution is occurring always at a slow pace. So when I was going to college and we were taught evolution for the first time, we always thought that gradualism is the way of evolution, and also that sometimes we confused with that seasonal change of plants or anything very rapid change also. Can that be evolution? How do you separate? How can students get confused here, right?
That's an important point actually. So evolution can happen really fast or it can happen slowly. That depends on two things actually. One is the lifespan of an individual. Say for example, bacteria, which divides so frequently, like every 20 minutes it can divide, right? So in that, it can happen, one bacteria can give rise to many more in a very fast, the generation time of a bacteria is very, very rapid. So in that, evolution can occur very fast, but it also depends on the selection pressure.
So the changes comes in faster.
Changes comes in faster. Yes, so it really depends on the basically lifespan and also the selection pressure on that organism. So I'll give you one example.
Yeah.
So say we often talk about, there is antibiotic resistance in some bacteria. That resistance, say for example, there are some bacteria which are, staying in us, and say we take in an antibiotic, and what happens is generally all bacteria die because of that drug. But there might be few bacteria in that population which might actually have that resistance towards that antibiotic. Right? So what happens is those bacteria which survive will reproduce, giving rise to many more bacteria. So that pressure of here antibiotic is that pressure, external pressure, where this bacteria has mutated or some changes has happened where it has grown resistant to that particular antibiotic. So evolution can occur really fast in these bacterial population because of that strong selection pressure. So not only a small, short lifespan of a bacteria and a huge selection pressure that the bacteria has, the evolution can happen really, really fast. But say suppose selection pressure is not there, then, and also organisms which have long lifespans, maybe the evolution is quite slow. So it really depends on that context, whether something can be fast, some evolution can be very rapid, or evolution can be rather slow. It depends on both lifespan and also selection pressure of animals. Of course, there are animals and plants and of course bacteria, all organisms.
So now I think about it, when I think about this, so that is the reason also when we are selecting for plants or animals in plant breeding or animal breeding, that selection pressure is much higher than it is in nature. And that is the reason we show that change is very faster in those populations. Say rice, with reference to our book, we have rice and cotton. So changes there with selection becomes much faster compared to a natural population that is evolving in nature.
Yeah, so you mean to say that humans who are selecting artificially to grow, bigger tomatoes or sweeter corn or rice varieties.
Yeah.
So we are kind of putting that selection pressure in order, we are selecting certain traits so that those traits are picked up and they are transferred to the next generation. We are only picking those traits.
Yeah.
So in that terms, even humans are giving some kind of a selective pressure. Actually, that brings me to a good question. So can we as humans influence evolution of other organisms?
Yeah, this is actually very complex and I would say not difficult, but its comprehension is very complex. So let's take about, of course we all know, I'll take a basic example first and then take it to a little bit more complicated. When scientists talk about this influence, how human is influencing, we mostly talk about eco-evolutionary dynamics, not exactly evolution, because evolution manifestation takes time. So in a shorter while, say for example, we are polluting our environments, right? We are changing the land, we are fragmenting the land, we are making urbanization. So in this way, we definitely are changing the environment of other species. And that is how, say for pollution is known to cause higher rates of mutation or different rates of mutation, which will genetically get incorporated into an organism. So this is one part of it, and in how indirectly we are actually may change the genetic composition of other species. Another part will be direct impact would be we are causing, because of our influence, we are actually causing the extinction of some species.
We are totally wiping
out some species, right? We are introducing some species to a new area where it is evolving in a totally different trajectory. So these kinds of intervention, when we don't put enough knowledge, background knowledge to it and do, that can have direct impact on the macroevolution of the life itself. So that is how we are definitely impacting organisms. And not to keep in mind here is that we are not alone, right? Any organism is not alone, humans are not alone. So
we have a lot of things in
impacting them. They are also impacting us. So everything is co-evolving together. We are all interconnected. So how that is going, that trajectory is definitely very unpredictable in nature. So the outcome we are giving something, but the input we are giving something, but the outcome that is coming, we completely don't know what it is going to be.
And a lot of species influence each other.
Of species. We have gut microbes, we have other microbes, some beneficial, some not beneficial. So how all these things are interacting, it impacts, and we are also influencing. And that brings me to another question for you, is that humans, are we also evolving? So because our generation time is quite larger, right? We have now average 75 years we live. So how is that impacting us?
Of course, we are animals too. So definitely we are also evolving. It's not that humans have stopped evolving, and that's another misconception.
Yeah.
When we think about it, right, like I think probably way back in Aristotle times, there is this, again, a chart which says that human beings are depicted at the, at the very end of a pyramid kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So, it starts from microbes and you go on, or even stones for that matter, non-living things, and you go reach human beings. And we might think that, humans are like a pinnacle of evolution and human beings are perfect, but that's not the case. So I'll actually talk about two examples, two specific examples here. So one is about how in certain areas in Africa where there is rampant malaria. So malaria is caused by a parasite which is plasmodium is the parasite, but that is carried by mosquito. Right? So there are malaria causing mosquitoes, basically parasite which is borne by this mosquito. There are areas in Africa where Africans are resistant to malaria. So I'm going to tell how they have evolved resistance to malaria. So there is a particular gene called as DARC. That's the kind of a short form of the gene. Basically, that gene codes for a protein which is on the surface of red blood cells. Okay, so this protein helps malarial parasites to bind to that surface. So malarial parasites bind to that surface protein to enter RBC cells. So what humans have evolved is where there is rampant malaria, there is a mutation in that DARC gene which causes some changes in that surface protein so that the plasmodium, that malarial parasite, can no longer bind to that particular protein. It's fantastic, right? Wherever there is need or wherever there is selection pressure, mutation has happened where basically the population is now resistant to malaria. But there is another point to this where basically it's not that now the whole entire African population is resistant to malaria. It's only in pockets where there is extreme, malarial cases. Those pockets have evolved resistance. But they are also more prone to HIV. So it's not that, okay, there's everything good happening. There might be certain benefits of a particular mutation, but there might be also some trade-offs of that particular mutation. So it's not that always certain things are always beneficial. There might be other kind of, problems with it. So that's one example. The other very, very interesting example is of lactose tolerance in humans. So all mammals, when mammals are young, so mammals is human beings, it can be cats, monkeys, donkeys, we know all the mammals. So when mammals are young, they need milk to grow. Milk has this lactose, which it gives lot of energy for young ones to grow. So, but after growing up, basically we don't need milk. So what happens is when we take in milk, that lactose is quite large and it is difficult to digest it. So what we have is, we meaning all mammals have, is one enzyme called as lactase. So this enzyme breaks down that. So that's during young ones. Okay. So basically this lactase enzyme is coded by a gene. So that gene is active when we are young. But when we grow up, of course, we don't need milk. And we don't need, basically that enzyme is not there. That lactase enzyme is inactive or it's not present. So in all mammals, so you take a cat or a dog, whatever mammal it is, when it grows up, if it drinks milk, basically it's not good for its health. So please don't feed milk to your cat because it can't digest it. Adult's cat can't digest milk. What happens, there might be gas produced, or they might have diarrhea or bad stomach cramps. Actually,
Generally, humans have these kind
humans
of
also
symptoms.
have it, right?
Yeah.
We don't realize it with respect to other animals, but we ourselves are intolerant for lactose. So, but it turns out that 1/3 of the human population in the world are lactose tolerant. So you might ask, how are they tolerant for lactose? So it turns out that this takes us back to 10,000 years back when humans were first to kind of start domesticating cattle. Okay, so at that time civilization had just started and there was domestication of cattle. So a lot of people in Africa and also in some parts of northern Europe had a lot of cattle that gave them a lot of milk. So this was also, of course, these are all hypotheses, okay? People have looked at, DNA evidence and other evidence to kind of think about this and come up with this idea. That was also a time where there was a lot of famine and drought and diseases and stuff. So in a population, if people consumed milk and if they were able to kind of digest that milk and if they grew stronger, those were the people who succeeded and they survived, right? So they had a mutation. This was basically a mutation where lactase is always on. Lactase gene or the enzyme is active. So they could break down lactose and hence they were able to kind of do quite well. So this is a fascinating story actually, and this shows that it's not that humans have stopped evolving. Depending on the circumstance and need and the context, we are still evolving. I mean, the story is just 10,000 years old and that's very, very recent in that aspect. So that's one example. I had forgotten to ask you one more question in this context. So we talk about, evolution making everything very fit or making organisms fit or perfect, right?
Yeah.
So is that really true? Does organisms become perfect?
Yeah, this is a very important thing to understand. Perfection is relative, right? And so that directly emphasizes on that nature is putting the selection. We call selection by nature. And nature is not trying to make us a perfect organism, superorganism. Nature, what it is doing is it's giving some pressures in an environment. So it is very relative to the environment we are in. And those selection pressure is randomly put on the organisms, and the random organisms, whichever is best fitted in that. Say, for example, you just talk about 2/3 of the population was good in lactose, digesting lactose. So similarly, say there is a population, only 2/3 or half of the population is actually very fit for that environment. Say, for example, let's take a rice example. A very drought tolerant rice variety is growing in one pocket, and that population is very strict pressure or very high pressure of drought is given, and only few individuals or half of the individuals survive.
Okay.
And then in the next generation it will go, so that kind of some genes are triggered there, next generation it will go, those characters will be emphasized. So slowly over generation in that region, the rice variety will be very drought tolerant.
Okay, it happens slowly.
It happened. It will say it happened slowly. But if you put a very high selection pressure in that area, it might also happen that some other beneficial genes might get lost. For example, if there is a drought tolerant variety of rice, it might actually be giving less yield in that environment.
So it's not always that perfect in one sense, but
yes,
there may not be perfect in other.
So there's always a trade-off, evolutionary trade-off we call. And if you now bring that drought-tolerant individual or population to a mesic environment where there's a lot of moisture or water, it might not need to become drought-tolerant, but then it still can't produce too much yield what we need in that environment because it is already fixed its gene in that particular environment. So it will take a lot more generations to again evolve in a different way.
So it may not do well in a
It may
different
not do well.
context.
So it's not that nature is selecting something perfect, it's that perfect or best fit for that environment. And I know this is a very common misconception, and sometimes even adults make mistake, right? But it is not perfect. So then we can all, if it is perfection, we want to produce, we are humans, we want to produce our own food. Why don't we start photosynthesizing? That is not possible, right?
Yeah.
So those things are perfect in particular environment, and whatever traits you have evolved to do this.
I'm reminded of this common saying that it's survival of the fittest. That is also not actually correct,
Yeah.
right? Because it's not that
Partially correct.
it's just, all of them who are only fit or the fittest
Yeah.
will survive, because it's not like that, because even the not so fit
Will survive.
organisms will also survive, because the fit is not fit in all aspects, as you were rightly saying.
Yeah.
And the not so fit plants or animals or organisms, they might be fit in other ways. So it's a misnomer, or it's not fully correct to say that survival of the fittest.
Actually, it's a very good thing that you brought it up, because fitness also can be thought in terms of Darwinian fitness or just existing in that environment, because Darwinian fitness directly connects to the offsprings you produce.
Okay,
right?
so fitness has an English connotation.
Yes.
Fit is not just, okay, you can go to a gym and become very fit. It's not just that.
No.
But biology also, fitness means reproductive fitness
Reproductive
or Darwinian
fitness.
fitness.
Darwinian fitness.
Okay, where it produces more
So you have
offsprings.
you have to sustain that in that environment, but you have to be fit also to produce offsprings, which will be taking your generation forward. So that it's Darwinian fitness, which we often forget to keep in mind.
All right. So I would like to expand on this.
Yeah.
So again, when we think about, how would other organisms, say for example, one is very fit, but I just said that there are other not so fit organisms in that, individuals in that species will also survive, right? How would they survive? There might be several strategies. One interesting strategy is they might simply cheat to survive.
Yeah.
So these are various adaptations.
Yeah.
So as I said earlier, I work on insects and spiders.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of things like there are a lot of cheaters. So what I want to tell you is it's not that cheating is bad in that sense. Of course, it's also relative. So I'm not talking about cheating in that English sense, but it as a strategy, where that's also a strategy where they are fooling certain individuals. It might be predators, it might be mates or whatever, and then getting away and also surviving.
Yeah,
so
I mean, best example comes from
strategies.
your mimicry, mimics, group of mimics.
Yeah, so they might fool a predator and they might survive equally well. So it's not that there is one strategy in life.
Definitely.
There are
So
many strategies.
best fit in that environment, you can evolve several different strategies. And it's not that everybody, as you said, is a perfect organism. Some, like for coexistence in nature happens only if some are dominant and some are docile, right? Everybody wants to dominate the system. That is not possible. So coexistence can only happen that way. I think we are running out of time, so we will conclude here our session. Please feel free to contact us on our online platform. We can have an interactive session where you can bring your questions. Please think about these questions, ponder on it, and get back to us.